Hey, what's up, comrades? We're here to talk about volume number 19. Right. Here we go. We pick up with K at Shith or K at Shelter, and we see there are a bunch of like goofballs, and then the leader is just some drunk who like chugs wine and then spits it out while he's screaming. His name's Robal, if that's important. He has a lot of faith in Wendy, apparently, because they're like, we got to do something, we got to move, and he's like, no, we sent somebody, they'll be fine. And then he makes some like comment about atoning for his sins, sins of the guild, which is kind of poesh. We then head back over to Lucy, Natsu Gray, and Happy, who are trying to figure out how to stop this thing. And then Wendy's like, wait a second, I have an idea. She thinks Happy, she thinks Natsu, and then she thinks Jalil, and she runs off. And they're like, okie dokie, and Jura's still there with them. At that point, they get some message, and it's like a telepathic message, supposedly from Richard, the gold guy. And they believe it, even though it's sent from Brian. Oh no! And he tells them to stop Nirvana. They have to go find Midnight and stop him, and that he's at this like certain location underneath like the throne. So like, hooray! So they all run down there. Once they get inside that, there's like, oh, it's a trap, and the whole thing like collapses in on them. Meanwhile, Urza and Jalil are standing around, and Midnight walks up, and they have like some chit chat about how Brian's a bad guy, and Jalil's like, I'll take care of this, Urza. And then we flip back over to Natsu and crew, and we see that Jura stopped the trap, stopped them from being crushed, and then he like passes out because it was so much energy, and then Natsu's like super pissed off. So they head out. Meanwhile, Wendy is flying around with Carla, trying to get to where Jalil and Urza are, because she has like a super great idea or something, and so she's heading that way. And then Urza sees Jalil get the shit kicked out of him by Midnight, because he has no magic left, and he shouldn't have definitely gotten in the way and tried to fight. So now it's Urza versus Midnight, and then we get a pretty badass like shonen anime battle. So she's trying to attack him, but he's got some sort of like reflecting magic, so he can reflect magic, and then he can create like illusions so that you don't know exactly where he's at, so you're not going to hit him. And she's trying to hit him with swords, and she's like missing and countering, and then he uses like her armor against her because he can like reflect the magic, so he can like reshape the magic around her, and then so she has to burst through that, uses like a different kind of sword attack, and then tries to, and then we flip back over to Natsu and crew, and they're like, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do? That was when Brian, that guy was a jerk. And then we hear like some laughing, and it's the staff that Brian was carrying around, and apparently he's the 7th member of Oracion Seis. And then Natsu or somebody makes a comment, it's like, wait, Seis is 6, like why? That doesn't make any sense. And then Natsu grabs the staff and starts bashing on the ground. He's like, hey, take that. And then he like flies off, and he's like, you guys are violent, something. We head back over to, and when he tells them they're going to destroy Chaos Shelter, and then we head back over to Urza, who's trying to spam attack Midnight, but that's still not working. Like all her swords are being reflected or whatnot. And then he wraps up her armor once again, and then does this like spiral pain thing. Oh, so he's like doing all this stuff in her, and she chucks the sword at him, and he dodges out of the way. He then does this like spiral pain attack or whatever, and then Urza collapses like naked onto the ground, and then Jill's like, no, something, and then Midnight starts telling us he starts lore dumping on us. So we learned that the Nirvana was created by the Nervit, and they created this magic, and they're like, oh shit, this is not what we wanted to do, so we're gonna bury it and not use it anymore. And that the Nivit, the Chaos Shelter, is the descendants of the Nivit, and to be in Chaos Shelter, you have to be a member of the Nivit. And then we find out that the staff's telling, it's one of those anime things where the staff's telling Natsu, Lucy, and Gray the exact same story. And then, so like, why would they want to bury this? We got to destroy them, because the only people who can destroy Nirvana are the Chaos Shelter, and they just haven't because they're cowards or neutral or something. But we're going to use it against them, destroy them, and then Nirvana will be forever, and then we can use it to destroy the whole world. And he's like laughing and talking about slaughtering people and all this stuff. And then he calls Jalil out for being like evil man, and he like offers to make Jalil a member of the Oracion Seis for all the evil stuff he's done. And then Urza stands up. Hell yeah, she does. Of course she does. It's a shonen anime battle. And she says, who knows the light that shines with the light that shines in with Jalil. Live and find out what happens next. And then Midnight's like, ooh, you're back. Let's see how this goes. And so then they taunt each other, and then the battle begins again. This time Urza is using this like spear and like some sort of like new uniform. And so she misses him with his first strike, which is like, oh yeah, of course. And then she like pummels him with her fist and sends him crashing against the wall. And he's like, the fuck? And Jalil's like, what just happened? And then she like has figured out all his maneuvers. So his whole thing is that he can only target like one spot at a time for his counter magic. And so while he was like wrapping her up, he didn't have any defenses. And also like physical attacks are like super powerful against him. He has no ability to like defend against them, particularly when he's and so let's see. And so she casts some like knives against him and whatnot to like pin him down and destroy him for good and whatnot. And then she makes mention that when she threw the sword, even though it was a magical sword, he dodged it instead of just letting it reflect away, and that kind of gave her some of that information. And it's the weaknesses. And then the last weakness, and everyone's like dueling, like Midnight and Jalal, like, wow, I'm so impressed that you figured that out so quick. The uniform she transformed into, it's like an infinity robe, and so it's able to stretch forever. So it has like his magic has like no effect on her whatsoever. And then Midnight starts laughing. He's like, I'm gonna unlock you've done this to yourself. You're gonna have to view this like monstrous beast and whatnot. And so he starts turning black, and he turns into like this big scary demon looking thing, and he's like laughing and screaming, and he runs at Urza and does some sort of like crazy attack, and then he impales and knocks Urza back, and then he impales Jalil with like a horn or a dagger or something, and then he impales Urza, and then he's like, oh, there's nothing you can do about it, and then Urza fucking kills him with her sword attack, and he's like, ah, and then we find out that the whole thing was just an illusion, and we see Urza with one eye closed, because remember, one of her eyes is fake, and she's like, you didn't know that optical magic doesn't work on me at all. And then Midnight's laying there crying to the heavens and talking about how he's done for and how this is awful and his power's gone. And then Urza says this like hilarious thing. She's like, if you truly wish to be tireless, then first you must realize your own weaknesses. Your own weakness. Do that and you will surely become a much gentler person. And I was like, what does that have to do with anything? I mean, it's badass as hell, but still. Back to the staff, it's beating up Gray and Natsu, hitting him in the face. It's like perving on Lucy, all this stuff. And then we see, and then all of a sudden the staff's like, wait a second, all 6 demons are out. Uh-oh. This is bad. That one's coming. And then we see all the members of Oracion Seis knocked out. And then we see Brian, and all the tattoos on his face are gone, and his eyes are turning black, and he's like, what's going on? And they're like, well, Brian's got a split personality, so there's Brian, and then he used magic to seal up his other personality, which is named Zero, and he's like 10 times more powerful, and all this stuff. And then Brian walks out, or he's Zero now, and the staff bows to him, and he's like, what's going on? And the staff like tells him, kind of catches him up, and he's like, I see, and he like takes off Brian's clothes, and like summons like magic clothes or whatever. And then Natsu makes a comment about being like the creepiest thing he's ever seen. And then he goes to like blast Jura because he's an asshole and he just wants to destroy everything. And then Gray stops him with his shield, and then Natsu goes to fight him and he gets knocked out. And then Lucy's just like scared as shit, and so he like blasts her, and so they're all knocked out. And he's like, ah ha ha, you dead brats, I'll get you. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. Ha 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 ha. And then they keep moving towards Cat Shelter, and the staff's like, oh, master, blah, 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 blah. Here it is, something, something. And then Zero gets super mad and grabs the staff and just like smashes it to pieces. And he's like, I don't want to just destroy Cat Shelter, I want to destroy everything. And then he activates Nirvana Fire. At that point, Wendy runs up to Urza and Jalil, and they start talking, and Jalil doesn't remember Wendy because he doesn't remember shit all. And then like, wait a second, what's that sound? And then we hear like the blast starting to go up, and everyone in Cat Shelter is sitting there huddled around the chief or the guild master, and the guild master's like, why do you cringe? This is our punishment for our sins. And then Zero's super excited and everyone's yelling, and then the blast goes off and it completely misses Cat Shelter. And that's because, dun dun dun, the Christina's back. If you don't remember the Christina that was like 4 volumes ago or something. It's the flying ship from Blue Pegasus. Yeah, that's the old male guild with the pretty boys. They're back. That's right. So all the people who were knocked out from before, like Hibiki is the big one. I don't know if I mentioned his name, but Leon and Sherry and that whole crew, they're all back, and they're all using all their magic. They've repaired the ship. They had like one blast, and they blasted the leg so it would go down. And then Hibiki's like, hey, I was checking out the archives, and I found out from the archives that the legs of Nirvana are taking, they have lacrim in them, and they're pulling magical energy out of the earth constantly. And that if you destroy one at a time, there's other lacrima that like repair them, so you have to destroy them all at the exact same time, and that'll like officially destroy Nirvana. So video game logic. It's and so that he puts in everyone's heads exactly what they need to do, and somehow Zero like knows about this, or like he heard about this or something. He figured it out, and he's at one of the legs. And so they're going to have to split up, and everyone's going to have to take a separate leg and destroy it all at the same time. And they get like a 20-minute timer, I think is what gets mentioned. And he's like, well, whatever, you're going to have to find me and do this. And then Urza and Jalil are like, fuck, there's only like 3 of us. There's only 2 of us. And then Ichiya-san, who's the guildmaster for Blue Pegasus, or no, Blue Pegasus. He's like, I'm still here. That makes 3. And then there's Wendy, but Wendy doesn't have any like attack magic. All she knows is healing magic, so she's useless. And they're like, fuck. Is there anybody out there who can do anything to help us out? And like the whole crew on the ship is like totally tapped out. Like they were tapped out before, and then they used all the energy they could muster to like just get the ship to stop that one attack, and they're all like passed out. And then we get some friendship is magic as Leon's calling out to Gray and Sherry's calling out to Lucy and the boys are calling out to Natsu, and they're just praying that they can hear and they'll wake up because they're like knocked out and whatnot. And it's like, do you hear our voices? And then we get this super fucking badass scene where like Lucy's climbing up a wall and Gray's like screaming into the heavens and Natsu's on his knees and he's like, yeah, we hear you, we're up. And like, yeah, we heard everything, we're good to go. And like, we got this, we'll take the other 3. And then fucking bad. This manga is so goddamn good. It's like hype after hype. Anyway, so then they got 6 legs I gotta figure out. So everyone there's like, what leg do you want? And then Natsu's like, I want number 1, Gray's 2, Lucy's 3, Ichiya is number 4, Ursa's 5, and then that leaves Jalil to do 6. But before Jalil can say anything, Ursa stops him because Natsu will go fight Jalil because he hates him because he made Ursa cry. Don't forget, that was the thing that happened. And it comes up. Anyway, so then everyone starts bouncing off towards their respective areas, and of course Natsu goes to where Zero's at, and he chose number 1 specifically because he figured Zero would go there, and he wanted to fight him, of course. And Ursa like calls us out. She's like, well, Zero's probably with Natsu, and like, well, we should go help him. And she's like, no, he's got it. He'll be fine. And Jill's like, okay. And then all of a sudden he gets like some of his memory back. He's like, Natsu dragged Neil? And they're like, what? And he's like, nothing. I gotta go. And so he starts meandering off. And then we get some shonen anime fight with Natsu and Zero, and they're going back and forth. And Natsu's doing like a decent job considering he's got like the shit kicked out of him like 5 times already. And that Zero's like fresh as a daisy. And all of a sudden Natsu gets blasted with like some fire magic, and it's Jalil. And he's like, Jalil! And then Zero's like, oh ho ho ho. I gotta say, we get these like chapter headings, and they're pretty good thus far. Like before, we were just getting like characters from Fairy Tail and like their like backgrounds and whatnot. But for example, for chapter 159, we get this like fantasy. I mean, the whole thing's fantasy, but we see like there's like an owl creature, and everyone's like in winter and they're wearing clothes, and Lucy's wearing like stripper outfit, which is fucking hot as hell. So fantastic. Anyway, so Jalil's standing there, and Natsu calls out to him, and then he like climbs up, and then he gets blasted again with more fire magic, and they talk about how like Natsu gets his power from fire, and Jalil's like, I know, that's why I'm here. And then Natsu's like, oh yeah, fuck you made Ursa cry. So he starts punching him. It's like, I'm not your ally, something. And then Zero's like, all right, enough of this. So he tries to blast both of them, and then Jalil takes his spot, which is reminiscent of when I can't remember what his name was, but Iron Jaw took the blast from him before with Ursa when he was blasting Ursa and Natsu, and he has like some remembrance of this, and he kind of passes out, and he's like, hey, Natsu, take this. And Natsu's like, it's a golden flame. And then we flip over to Wendy, and we get a little flashback to where Jalil's like, hey, I gotta go help Natsu. You can do this. You can take care of number 6. You got this. And so he sends her over there, and she's standing there, and she's like, all right, I got no attack magic. What am I gonna do? And she's like, and there's like, and then she remembers there was a conversation about how like she's a dragon slayer, and that all dragons have offensive powers because their whole point of their magic is to like kill dragons. So there's got to be something there. And he's like, consume the air, consume the sky, consume the heavens. It's within you. And so she starts summoning like something from like her master. And then Jalil's like, here, Natsu, take this. I trust you because Ursa trusts you. And then he absorbs all the fire. And he's like, hell yeah, time, burn it up. And we get this badass shot of him standing there. And Jalil's like passed out on the ground. He's not passed out. He's like just standing there. And so then we get like a badass shonen anime battle between Zero and Natsu, and they're going back and forth. Well, first we get like a standoff. Sorry. And then the battle begins, and then Lucy's like at number 3, and she's like crying in the corner, and she's like, I can't do this. I don't have any magic power left. Like, I'm totally tapped out. What am I going to do? And then Gemini shows up. You remember Gemini? They were part of What's-Her-Fuck's crew, but they like didn't attack her because of her emotions, and they say that. They're like, your emotions have moved us, so they transform into Lucy, and like, we'll go ahead and carry out your will. And then Lucy and Happy are like crying. Back to Natsu. He's doing animation and fighting, like, blast this, jumping around, this blast, that blast, absorbing fire, getting kicked around. Punching each other at the same time. We see Gray, he's ready, Ursa's ready, and then everyone's like thinking about like what's going on, and Nirvana and stuff, and then Ichiya-san is there, and then Wendy's like summoning some sort of crazy sky power. Head back to the battle. Natsu's having a rough time regardless of everything, and he's like thinking about all his friends and stuff, and then he's like, he literally says, the power of my friends is coursing through my body. fucking love this manga. Because friendship is magic, motherfuckers. Oh, Lord. So good. I love it. So then he unleashes like the Dragon Slayer secret attack. And then Zero uses Genesis Zero, and they're both like screaming, and they're both coming at each other. And then dun dun dun. That's the end of volume number 19. Not quite. There's a side story, which is very sweet, and it involves Lucy, so it's always a pleasure. But so we take a break from the main story there, and we go back in time, and we see Kara talking to Lucy about having boyfriends or going on dates. And Lucy's like, yeah, I've been on tons of dates. I've been on like 3. And Kara's like, you're a liar. And she's like, I don't know. And then Kara's like, hey, everybody, Lucy's 17 and never went on a date. And then someone pulls like her card. I think Kara's like the card dealer. So she pulls a card. It's like, ooh, there's love in your day today. And then Lucy's at like the bookstore looking at something, and she reaches for a book at the same time as like this very typical, I think it's seinen is what it's called. Like it's like young woman's anime or manga, where it's like a very handsome boy with glasses, and like, you know, the hair's in his face a little bit, and he's super sweet, and it's like we have a little story with them. So she like runs away because she's freaking out, and then he follows her and he's like, oh, you should take this book, and like he's so nice, and he's like, hey, I'm trying to write, and she's like, oh, I'm a writer. And then he's like, well, how about you take me and show me around town, and something, you can have the book. And she's like, okay. And so they go on like a little date. She shows her around everywhere, and he's like super happy, and she's super pleased. And then Natsu walks up and is like, you have a creepy grin on your face. And she's like, no. And he's like, and she's like, get out of my face. That's not creepy. And then he's like, what do you want? And then she's like, what do you want? And they're like, hey, we want to go on a quest. And she's like, no, I have plans tonight. And they're like, oh, okay. And then Mary Jane's like, oh, they were so excited to see you because it's your birthday today. And she's like, what? It's not my birthday. This motherfuckers. We then go over to Magnolia Station, where Natsu and Happy are waiting on a train to leave. And Happy's like, I guess Lucy's not coming up. And then she pops up, and she's like, sorry to keep you waiting. And they're like, hey, what about your appointment? And she's like, forget it. But also, you know, today's not my birthday. And then Natsu's like, it's your birthday because it's been exactly 1 year from when you were born as a fairy tale wizard. And then, of course, Lucy is super, like, she starts crying and everything. And she's like, that was a fateful encounter, which was like the name of the book that the boy and her grabbed and all this like crazy stuff. And then Happy's like, why are you crying? And we get one final panel, and it's Kara hitting on the boy who came for Lucy's date, because she's like, hey, can you cover for me? And the guy's like, ooh, you're just my type. So everybody wins. Lucy gets to be with her true love, Natsu. And the boy gets to be with Kara, who's probably going to show him a great time. Anyway, that's volume 19. Go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.